All right, we are here at the Fit Republic Gym in Tacoma, guys, and this is Zach Pieper stepping up to the bar. He's going to be attempting to set a new personal PR on his favorite lift, the deadlift, today. Now, we see him now doing his pre-lift ritual, doing a bar rollout. Very common for deadlifters to do the pre-bar rollout. And as you can see, he's not wearing a weight belt. He is raw dogging life today. Okay, he's about to attempt the lift. Oh, a little bit of stick there, but it looks good. And he is vertical. What a lift. Oh, what a great set down too. You notice he did not just drop the bar, but he actually committed to the set down. What a lift.
Greetings, friends, and mostly enemies. Please forgive the slight flex on that opening skit, but it's very much relevant to today's discussion. Today, I wanted to discuss physical feats in fiction. It's something we're all super familiar with if we read anything other than, like, romance. You know, physical feats in fiction. Oh my god. They range from the utterly epic to the utterly absurd, and I absolutely had to address it as someone who is into physical fitness, obviously. So if you'll excuse one more small flex, I do want to offer my credentials to this conversation so that you take what I have to say with a little bit of believability, believeness, faith. What's the opposite of taking something with a grain of salt? The first thing that is worth talking about is a personal training certification from the American Council on Exercise. If you don't know anything about the American Council on Exercise, they are one of the most renowned and acknowledged and accredited personal training certification programs. They are great. I mean, you basically have to do like a year's worth of college study in terms of the curriculum they put you through to get that certification. It is very knowledge intensive. And besides that, I also attended the prestigious Divers Institute of Technology. And you might be wondering, well, why is that relevant? Well, I'll tell you why it's relevant. To be a certified commercial diver, you have to learn a bunch of stuff about the human body. Specifically, stuff as it relates to the bends and arterial gas embolisms and basic first aid. I am actually certified to put you in a decompression chamber and treat you for decompression sickness, and I have done it to my fellow students. So that's why it is relevant. I bring it up because I am a relatively knowledgeable person where it comes to the human body. I'm no Jeff Cavalier, I'm no medical doctor, but I do know what I'm talking about in general. With those qualifiers, credentials, whatever, out of the way, let's get into the discussion proper. The first thing I wanted to talk about, I actually meant to talk about this in my Dresden review, and don't worry, we're not going to go and do a big long rehash of the book. We're going to talk about one quick thing and quickly move on to other topics. But in his new book, Peace Talks, Dresden has recently gained a significant power boost from the Winter Fey court, and he did something in the very opening of this book that I just thought was absurd, and I couldn't not talk about it. Okay, check this out. He's been doing laps around this beach in Chicago, and I looked it up on Google today. It's about a mile long. So he doesn't say how many laps he did in the text, but he does say he's been doing laps on this beach wearing a 220-pound weight vest. Why is that relevant? So, I don't know if you've ever ran in the sand for any length of time. It's very hard work. I don't know if you've ever ran with something on your back. Even harder work. I ran an obstacle course where a fireman carry was part of the obstacle course. Jungle juice break. And moving with 220 pounds on your back is hard enough. Running in sand with that on your back, you're going to get tired very quickly. Your muscles are going to start approaching give out very quickly. But Zach, he's the Winter Knight. Of course he's able to do crazy stuff like that. See, here's why I think it merits discussion. According to the resident medical expert on all that is weird in this book series, Waldo Butters, the winter mantle doesn't actually make the knight any more physically powerful than he already was. It does a few things very specifically. It inures him to pain. It allows him to ignore the body's normal physical limits on strength. So, your body limits what its muscles do at any given time so that it doesn't break itself, because you actually have enough strength in your muscles to break your bones. Right now, it's crazy. And your mind automatically limits that. And he suspects the winter mantle also ramps up hormone production, testosterone, that kind of thing, to increase aggressive tendencies. So that's the leading theory from Waldo Butters in the canon. And I think that's relevant because so far, everything else Waldo has said has pretty much been confirmed, either directly or indirectly, to be the way it is, right? And so we know that that's roughly the idea that Jim Butcher wants us to run with in terms of the Winter Knight. But I don't think that's how it is. I actually think the Winter Mantle is making Harry Dresden superhuman. I think it is pushing him past what human beings are normally physically capable of, not just making him immune to pain, not just giving him the ability to access his full potential all the time. And here's why. When you start talking about doing things like running laps on a beach with 220 pounds on your back, you're not just talking about physical strength. You're talking about all kinds of physical limits: strength, endurance, energy production in the body, the body's ability to produce ATP the entire time it's working out. ATP is the body's chemical currency for energy. You're making ATP constantly. It's primarily what we use calories to make, ATP. And so when you put the body under extreme load like that for extreme periods of time, it runs through a cycle to make ATP. It recycles waste products. It uses sugar. It begins eating into the sugar that's stored in our liver and muscles. And after it runs out of those things, it starts eating fat. And once it's done with the fat, it starts eating protein. And if it has to start eating protein, and there isn't much protein in your blood, it's going to start eating your muscles. That's what the process of starvation is. So the reason it's relevant, the amount of energy it takes to sprint on a sandy beach or even jog on a sandy beach with 220 pounds on your back. I'm sorry, a normal human, even an extremely well-trained human, you're not going to maintain laps of that for very long. Once you start talking about insane feats of endurance like that, you quickly deplete ATP stores. And there comes a point where it doesn't matter how strong you are, how far you can push yourself mentally. There comes a point where your body's out of ATP and you collapse because you're out of energy. You're just out of energy. And I believe that unless he had supernatural energy being fed into his muscles, he would reach that point fairly quickly. Because, 220 pounds, Dresden probably weighs about 220 pounds. He's like 6'7". He's very well muscled at this point because he's consistently training with the Winter Mantle. He's probably around 220, maybe 250. So he's basically carrying himself on his back doing laps on a sandy beach. I'm sorry. You don't keep energy stores in your body very long under those circumstances unless he was doing a very light jog. You could probably sustain a very light jog for a good long while. But if he was pouring on any kind of speed, I'm very skeptical about how much of that is his body's natural physical capability and how much of that is the Winter Mantle. So I just had to bring up that point because, oh my God, it's an amazing physical feat. And a lot of the physical feats that he has pulled off since that Winter Mantle was bestowed upon him have been absurd levels of, suspended disbelief. So with that said, that's it for the Dresden part. Moving on. The next point I want to bring up is the golds in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. Great series. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It is science fiction and study of the human condition at its finest. Very good read. Very imaginative story and world building. But what I want to talk about specifically is the raw power described by Pierce Brown to be exuded by the golds and the obsidians. So, for those of you who don't know anything about the series, the golds and the obsidians are specially bred, genetically engineered through many, many generations, and they also, it's vague, but they talk about, in the book, they talk about cybernetic enhancements. We don't know exactly what all of them do. We know they have stronger bones, and we know that they have increased durability, their skin is tougher, but we don't know much more than that. But for this discussion, the bones are highly relevant. So, we see an obsidian by the name of Ragnar power clean an amount of weight that most humans can't even move, okay? We don't get an exact number in the text, but the text says he went into the gym, loaded the bar up with as many plates as it would take, and power cleaned it. Okay, well, we know that there's bars right now that you can load up with over 1,000 pounds. The world squat record right now is like 1157, if I remember right. That's pounds, 1157 pounds, held by some really buff powerlifter. And that is an insane amount of weight. Whoever you are, that's an insane amount of weight. So imagine not just squatting that, but power cleaning it. That's going from the bar being on the ground. You get into the position very similar to what you saw me do in the beginning of the video with the deadlift, and you rise with speed enough to give you the momentum needed to take that bar and do this and get that bar across your chest like that. That's a power clean. The amount of juice you would have to put out, the amount of force you would have to exert to power clean 1,000 pounds. And by the way, this might have been more than 1,100 pounds, because this is a futuristic gym with futuristic alloys in a gym made for people who have superhuman strength. There might have been 1,500 pounds on that bar, and Ragnar power cleaned it. That's absurd. I'm sorry. I do not care who you are. I do not care what kind of science fiction or fantasy you are into. That's a lot of weight, and you expect me to believe someone who's basically human, you expect me to believe they just power cleaned that? Yeah. I'm skeptical because the obsidians, they're not spliced with a gorilla. There's nothing but human there. They are the pinnacle of physical potential of the human species. So that makes me think of, what else are these people capable of? And in the series, we see some absurd shit. We see in the very last book that just got put out by Pierce, we see an obsidian basically take a grenade to the face and live. Okay, that's a feat of superhuman durability. And I'm sorry, it's bullshit. The concussive blast from the explosion should have turned his brain to mush, and he was up and walking around unconscious. It is absurd. So, obviously, why am I saying all this? Why am I picking a bitch? It's fantasy, it's science fiction, there's supposed to be stuff like this. Here's why I'm making a bitch about it. Because I want my science fiction to be somewhat rooted in reality. It's science fiction, not hard fantasy. If we're talking about hard fantasy, I'm a little bit more, in fact, I'll say I'm a lot more forgiving of it, because in hard fantasy, we're detached from reality. We have dragons who weigh many, many tons, flying on wings that would never be able to support them. We have soft magic systems, which I have no problem with, for the record. We have all kinds of crazy stuff going on that would never work in the real world, but most science fiction tries to be grounded in the real world, tries to be grounded in physics. Well, guess what? The physics says that what humans are made of we probably will never power clean 1,500 pounds. We'll probably never power clean 1,100 pounds. I'm not saying it will never happen, but I'm very skeptical it will ever happen. You take another example from the same series, Victra Aju Lee. She's described as bench pressing nearly 600 pounds. That's 150 pounds past the current world record for female powerlifting. That's a lot of weight. When you're talking about breaking a record, we're talking people usually do that by a pound or two. Breaking a world record for a power lift by 10 pounds is a huge deal. So the idea that we have a female in the far future who's supposedly just human breaking that record by 150, it's crazy to think about some of the implications of that. How far removed from humanity are these golds? And Victra is not even the strongest gold female in the series. That would probably go to Asia Aw Grimace. And she is a monster. She is like Terminator levels super soldier scary. If I had to guess, she's if you were to ask Piers Brown, he might say, oh yeah, Asia could bench press 700-800 easy. And that, to me, if he did come out and say something like that, would just further illustrate the point I'm making that, authors tend to go buck wild in fiction sometimes with stuff like this. And I'm sure if you read much in any genre besides, stuff like erotica or romance or whatever, I'm sure you've read stuff like that. Oh, he walked away from the massive explosion completely unharmed, or oh, he took 5 arrows to the chest but continued to battle for hours. Like, no, he didn't. Blood loss is like serious. He continued to battle for 10 minutes tops. So yeah, that's my rant. I just wanted to talk about all of that stuff and hear any thoughts you guys might have on it, because obviously it's a very subjective subject. If you think that I'm being a whiny little bitch about it, or if you think that I make some good points, let me know in the comments. Like the video, share it with your friends, get the discussion going. I would love to talk with you guys about it and answer any questions you might have for me about superhuman feats in fiction. Who knows? Maybe I'll make a video just out of comments I received from it, because the human body fascinates me and physical activity fascinates me. I love working out. I love being physical, and I love talking about it. So without further ado, I'm going to peace out. I'll catch you guys next time.